Well, good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here at this interdisciplinary conference on SETI and Big History. My name's Ian Crawford, and I'm from Birkbeck College in the University of London, and I'm an astronomer by background. But what I want to do this morning is draw some connections, and Lowell has already touched on some, between the emerging science of astrobiology and the emerging discipline of big history as I see them. And then I want to draw what I see as some social and political implications. Part of this will address the question that was asked earlier about breaking down academic boundaries. Big history and astrobiology both are, I think, effective vehicles for breaking down academic boundaries. But then I also want to draw some perhaps more slightly controversial political conclusions from the perspectives, especially the historical, evolutionary and cosmic perspectives that I think both astrobiology and big history provide. This talk is written up in my, there is a special issue of the Journal of Big History, the current special issue of the Journal of Big History, devoted to relationships between big history and astrobiology. I'd like to thank Lowell very much for his help in getting this special issue together. And my own, this talk is based on my own paper in that collection of articles. So Lowell did an excellent job defining big history for us. I probably don't have to define astrobiology either for this audience. It's usually taken to be something along the lines of the study of the origin, evolution, distribution and future of life in the universe. I think I can draw immediate parallel here between astrobiology and big history in that they're both 20 years, they're both now established or almost established, becoming established academic disciplines. 20 years ago that was not the case for either. Certainly in the astrophysical community, astrobiology was looked at very skeptically. It was all little green men and UFOs. It was kind of unorthodox, or even less polite than unorthodox. But it's now grown, so it has its own university courses, it has its own journals. You'll recognize the two main international astrobiology journals at the top there. And considerable resources are now devoted to it, of course. You'll recognize the Curiosity rover on Mars, and the Parkes radio telescope, which is one of the telescopes. If I'd known Mike Garrett was here, I'd have shown Jodrell Bank, but I'm sorry, I've shown Parkes. But searching for extraterrestrial life in the intelligent life in the universe. So it's grown into what it, and certainly with the discovery of exoplanets in the last 15 years or so, astrobiology has grown into a mainstream discipline. And I think big history also has, over the same period of time, it now has its own journal, it's got its own university courses, it too has established itself as a respectable discipline. So there's a kind of parallel in the development of astrobiology and big history as academic disciplines. Now, to demonstrate the links between astrobiology and big history, I've got a sort of personal anecdote. I teach a module in astrobiology at Birkbeck, and I have here on the left the syllabus. And the first half of this 11-week term, this 11-week course, deals with the, well, you can read it, well, maybe not, because the writing's a bit small, but origin and distribution of the chemical elements, conditions in the early solar system, the origin of the Earth, earliest evidence for life on Earth, pre-biological chemical evolution, history of life on Earth. All of that down to about week 6 is big history. After that, an astrobiology course goes off in a slightly different direction. It has to take the history of life on Earth and apply it to searching for life on Mars or on exoplanets, whereas big history carries on with the human evolution and the evolution of human cultures and human societies. But there is this significant overlap between big history and astrobiology in terms of the subjects studied. Now, I know this because on the right, I have what was essentially my own attempt to teach big history in 1994, which was before I knew that David Christian had coined the term big history by then, but I'd never heard of it. So I established a course that I called Cosmic Perspectives for World History, and here is its syllabus: Big Bang, the origin of the stars, chemical elements, stars, formation of the solar system, and all the rest of it. And that has I taught that course in 1994, and it forms the basis of the first half of the astrobiology module that I'm still teaching at Birkbeck. So this demonstrates clearly, I mean, it's an anecdote, personal anecdote, but to me it clearly demonstrates the links between big history and astrobiology, because I've based an astrobiology course on what is essentially a big history course. Anyway, so what are the benefits of teaching astrobiology and big history and related disciplines? So I've got these bullet points. The first bullet point speaks to the question that was asked earlier. Multidisciplinary topics like big history and astrobiology cannot help but break down academic barriers, because you can't study big history and you can't look for life in the universe unless astronomers talk to geologists, talk to biologists. And so this siloization of sciences has been really, I mean, a lot has been learned, and tremendous progress has been made in the sciences through specialization, but one can make the argument that it's perhaps gone a bit too far. And once it got to the point that scientists in different disciplines no longer speak to each other, then we're kind of losing potential for making future progress at the boundaries of these disciplines. Well, astrobiology necessarily helps break down these disciplines, so does big history. And I think that what we're really doing with teaching disciplines like this, certainly for astrobiology and the sciences, is we're helping to produce a generation of much more broadly minded scientists who are much more aware of what different scientific disciplines can bring to a study of the natural world. Nature is a continuum. Nature cares nothing about our academic disciplines. And so by having, I'm in my astrobiology class at Birkbeck, I have astronomers, geologists and biochemists typically. And so we're producing, I think, a generation of much more broadly minded scientists, which I think is an intellectual benefit. I think we're also helping to break down barriers between the sciences and the humanities. This is, you recognise C.P. Snow there. This is C.P. Snow's worry about the two cultures, that the sciences and the humanities didn't speak to each other and spoke different languages. I think that's still largely the case, but academic subjects like big history can help break down these barriers also, especially since big history emerged from the humanities. It emerged from history. But similarly with astrobiology raises so many philosophical questions that we're having to get scientists to talk to philosophers and even theologians. This is also helping to break down barriers between the sciences and the humanities, so this is an intellectual benefit. So the first two bullet points there are perhaps relatively narrow intellectual academic benefits of teaching big history and astrobiology and related subjects. But I think by far the most important social, cultural benefit of these disciplines aren't these narrow intellectual benefits at all. They're the wider public benefits of trying to get the wider public to be more aware of cosmic and evolutionary perspectives. You can't teach big history or astrobiology or related subjects without becoming very aware that humanity exists on a very small planet, so that's a spatial perspective, but is also part of 13.8 billion years of cosmic evolution, and this is an evolutionary perspective. And I'm going to make the point that more people who have these perspectives would be beneficial for society at large. So the temporal perspectives, first of all, Lowell discussed this, and we all know what they are, with a history of the universe from the Big Bang 13.8 billion years ago to the present. I've reproduced here a diagram from one of Charlie Lineweaver's papers. It shows the evolution of life on Earth with its roots going all the way back to the Big Bang at the bottom, and then the biological evolution branching out at the top. So this is a temporal perspective that big history and astrobiology, you can't study those subjects without being aware of this temporal perspective. And just by the way, listed on the right, Charlie has written all the academic disciplines from astronomy to microbiology and zoology at the top that are required to understand this cosmic history. So this is a cosmic and evolutionary perspective, which I think would be beneficial if it was more widely known. Then there's the spatial perspective. So Lowell showed several of these pictures. This picture shows the Earth from the surface of Mars as imaged by Spirit rover in 2004. So that's just a little dot. So you don't have to get very far from the Earth and suddenly our cosmic perspective, the entire planet on which this whole 4.5 billion years of biological evolution has occurred is just this little dot. And there's a quote here that I like. I think it's apocryphal, unfortunately. It's a beautiful quote, and it's attributed to Alexander von Humboldt. And I've spent a lot of time trying to find out where exactly Humboldt said this, and I haven't, so I suspect it may be an apocryphal quote, but I think it's valid anyway, whether Humboldt said it or not. The most dangerous worldview is the worldview of those who have not viewed the world. So space exploration, in part conducted for astrobiological purposes, gives us this spatial perspective to view the world, just as big history gives us this temporal perspective. So this is in part a SETI conference, so I've only got one slide on SETI, and here's the Parkes telescope again. I think there are two possibilities really, aren't there? SETI may make a positive detection of an extraterrestrial intelligent civilization one day. That I think would change a lot. I certainly hope it would. It can't really do anything other than stimulate a lot of reflection on humanity's place in the universe, and this would reinforce the temporal and spatial perspectives that big history and astrobiology provide. Or SETI might not detect any such signals, and I'm much less sanguine than Lowell. I'm rather doubtful there are many technical civilizations in the galaxy, and I'm afraid I'm not banking on there being a positive detection, although it'd be fantastic if there were. But as Lowell has already said, made the point, just the continued search for extraterrestrial life through SETI and other means is still valid, even if the search never discovers extraterrestrial life or extraterrestrial intelligence. The mere searching for it still encourages these multidisciplinary perspectives, still encourages these cosmic perspectives, still encourages academic disciplines to talk to each other. So there's still a valuable societal benefit from SETI and astrobiology more widely, even if that search is not successful. Anyway, so now I get on to my slightly more controversial point. I think there's only a couple of slides left. Some of the implications for the cosmic and evolutionary perspectives that astrobiology and big history provide. Well, the first two will be obvious to everyone in this room, but they're not obvious to most of our fellow citizens, who I'm afraid to say still live in really a Ptolemaic, Earth-centered universe. I mean, intellectually, yes, we all know we live in the Earth is a planet orbiting the sun, whirling around in the middle of nowhere. But for most people's everyday lives, that isn't a perspective that really encroaches on them, and certainly it's not a perspective that encroaches on political decision makers who actually have decisions to make which are relevant to the planet as a whole. Anyway, the cosmic and evolutionary perspectives provided by big history and astrobiology reinforce the fact that the Earth is a very small planet adrift in a wider universe. It is currently the only inhabited planet we know of in the universe. It is very important that the long-term habitability of the Earth is maintained, regardless or not as to whether there's any life elsewhere in the universe. So this is an important lesson provided by this perspective. Evolutionary perspectives provided by astrobiology and big history reiterate the point that all life on Earth is related owing to its common origin and evolutionary history. This will be clear to all of us, but we have to get this message out to a wider public if it's to have societal benefits, I think. And then the last bullet point here is I make this assertion that I think humanity, so this is my view, it doesn't have to be your view, but I make this assertion that humanity has the responsibility to develop international social and political institutions that are appropriate to managing the cosmic situation in which we find ourselves. The cosmic situation in which we find ourselves, yes, it's this, the Earth from the moon, but it's actually much more like this. It's this little dot whirling around in the middle of nowhere with no one to come and rescue us if we get into difficulties. We have to organise this planet in such a way as to maintain our our civilization, yes, but also the long-term habitability of the world, of the planet. I mean, we don't know how common life is elsewhere in the universe. Astrobiology's main job is to try and get an answer to this question. But I'll just reiterate the point. Currently, this little dot is the only known inhabited planet in the universe. And for all we know, it may be the only inhabited planet in the universe. We certainly don't know otherwise. And so this gives a huge responsibility on humanity's shoulders to manage this planet and to maintain its habitability. I mean, it may not be, in a big history perspective, it might not be too much to say that the entire future of life in the universe might hinge on the future of life on this planet. And it is in our hands, and yet we currently lack the social and political institutions to manage it effectively or properly, in my view. So this brings me to my last slide, which you may or may not agree with. I think the perspectives of astrobiology and big history point to the desirability of a more politically unified world. I mean, you'll recognize this is the Earth photographed by Apollo 11 outward bound from the outward bound to the moon, so almost exactly 50 years ago. So I'm going to make the statement that if we want a more politically unified world, how are we going to do it? Now, Aristotle pointed out wisely a long time ago that man is a political animal. Human beings organize ourselves through our political institutions. So if we want to organize the planet effectively, we need political institutions that are planetary in scope. So I will make the argument that I think one possible appropriate political institutional embodiment that would be appropriate for managing the Earth in a cosmic context would be some kind of federal government for the planet. And I just quote here from, there exists an organisation, you may be surprised to know, called the World Federalist Association. And I just quote from the statement of purpose of the World Federalist Association. This is the second paragraph here. This is the essence of world federalism: to seek to invest legal and political authority in world institutions to deal with problems which can only be treated at the global level. Now, these, of course, include problems that have already hit us in the 21st century, like global warming, climate change, biodiversity loss, which really nation states cannot manage effectively because they see themselves as in competition with other nation states. So without a higher tier of global government, it's difficult to see how we're going to address these global problems effectively. But it also speaks to other global issues that we might arise in the future. So in a SETI context or an astrobiology context, who speaks for Earth? When it comes, if we find life on Mars and we have to make some decision what to do with Mars, who speaks for humanity? If we get a signal from SETI, if Jodrell Bank detect a signal or Parkes from an alien civilization then tomorrow, who speaks for humanity? How do we decide our collective response? Actually, we've got essentially no institutions that could speak for humanity legitimately in a cosmic context. And a world government of some sort might be able to achieve that. Now, I'm not so naive as to believe that world government is going to be politically easy to obtain. I mean, so even in the European Union, which I think is a fantastic model for how international governance might be developed, we're seeing a backlash against it, a nationalistic backlash. And indeed, we see that with Brexit in the UK. And this is a backtracking, going backwards politically, and so things might be going in the wrong direction. What we need, though, if we'd have to envisage a more unified planet, is we need a cultural understanding of our common humanity and our common history, big history, if you like, and our place in the universe. And this is where I think big history and related disciplines can really help. I've got my final quote here. This is my last slide, Claudio. But Ursula Goodenough's book called The Sacred Depths of Nature, I think. Anyway, she has this quote in it where she argues that any global tradition needs to begin with a shared worldview, a culture-independent, globally accepted consensus as to how things are. Our scientific account of nature, an account that may be called the epic of evolution, and that's her phrase, but this is big history just by another name. This is the story the one story that has the potential to unite us because it happens to be true. Or at least it is as true as modern science can make it. And so I think this may prove to be the largest societal or cultural benefit of big history for society, because it can help stimulate this sense of a united planet with a united history. Okay, thank you very much. Oh, okay. The kind of to those who are religious nationalists, I imagine this is their worldview. It worries me slightly, this phrase, because there are many religions and there are many nationalities. They're not always coterminous. But if I had to be brutally frank, I would say that I think it's a kind of perspective that a true understanding of our place in the universe, namely this little dot. I'm sorry, okay, we'll go back. Would ideally supplant. I wouldn't count myself as a fan of religious nationalism. I mean, so we can be religious nationalists. You can have lots of different religions and lots of different nations subscribing to different versions of religious nationalisms, and they all live on this little dot. And I think this is the perspective that has to, well, it would be desirable if more people had this perspective, I think, to counter religious nationalisms. So I think religious nationalisms are some things that need to be positively countered. I think big history can help. Sorry, I don't know whether that was the question.
I think you misunderstand it's a kind of a misnomer. It's a kind of an attempt to seek feelings of awe and connection with the universe that is based on science.
Okay.
That's really what Ursula Gutenberg is promoting.
Okay, so I did misunderstand. Right, so yes, I think good enough then. So if you go to good enough's book, I know you probably read it, The Sacred Depths of Nature. I mean, she takes a non-religious, but in a way spiritual view of humanity connected with nature, and from which she draws this conclusion. That it's a perspective that once grasped has the potential to unite humanity because we have this common evolutionary history. So I think if by religious nationalism we mean there's a phrase that's due to Barbara Ward actually when she wrote her book Spatial Perspective in 1966, and she speaks of the need to develop patriotism for the earth itself. So if religious nationalism, if nationalism was to mean a nationalism or a patriotism for the earth itself, then yes, I would be all for it, and I think the cosmic perspectives of big history and astrobiology can help develop it.
Thank you very much.